Okay, so we still have 2 more reviews after today. So today's the Thursday review. I'm as long as I don't have any snafus with students needing to retake tests, we'll be meeting on Tuesday, the 18th, and then our last one will be right before your test on Monday, the 24th, which is that Thursday, the 20th. So we will get together that last Zoom time, and I'll still be in here, so you're welcome. Excuse me. Where I'm going to get the practice is in the same place where you get the paper practice. These are the hard copy practice. And then right here is the exam online version if you haven't been here yet. Looks like there's some ATI breathing in here. But anyways, if you click on that, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to say, before you click on that, I had added some context to this. So it says to answer the numeric answer only. So that you want to make sure you read the directions before you take your test and make sure that do they want just the number? Do they want the number and the unit? Do they want you to write number space unit? Make sure you know what it is. Okay, so it should be told to you before you take the test. It shouldn't be a challenge. So like I gave the example that if let's say your answer is 2.5 milligrams, you're just going to type in the numerical part only, just 2.5. And so that holds true for this. And I'll show you what happens when it gets marked wrong. Okay. And then for half dosages here, the key is keyed so that it's 0.5. What are you looking for? Like a plug? Okay. There might be like one right between your seats. I might have to just open up the floor there. So if you get a half dose, then you're just going to put 0.5. That would be different on the paper test, but you always want to ask your lab instructor before you proceed so you know what it is. So I'm going to proceed based off of the information that was listed there. And you can take this unlimited times, take it multiple times. I'm going to show you where what it looks like when you get something wrong and then how to troubleshoot it. All right, so the test always opens up the same. The test always opens up the same, so the same questions are in the same order. When you take the questions, like really what's going to differ is the types of or the numbers in the questions, but the same similar questions are going to be asked as you're going through this. So so it won't be a surprise. And this is how straightforward it is. So like I said earlier, I'm not going to draw out anything, but there's a couple ways you can answer or solve this. You can move your decimal over 3 to the left, which is how I would typically do it. Or you can take the 1,500 milligrams times 1 gram over 1,000 milligrams. And then what that does is it cancels out the milligrams. You're left with grams, but it reminds you that the number is going to get smaller because you're using a larger unit. So when you answer this correctly, you put 1.5 and that's it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to intentionally get this question wrong. I'm going to answer at 1.500. If you add those lagging zeros, those trailing zeros, it will get marked wrong. And I'll show you how that is. Same thing with this one. I'm going to go from micrograms to milligrams. Milligrams is a bigger unit of measure than micrograms, so that means my number gets smaller. And so I'm going to move 1, 2, 3 places. And so my answer should be 0.25. Again, if you want to get this answer wrong, then forget the leading zero and it will get marked wrong. Okay, but let's make that one at least correct. Excuse me. All right, so we have 165 pounds. We're going to convert that to kilograms. I'm just going to take out my 10 key calculator. I'm just using the computer calculator. And I'm going to take 165. And I'm going to divide by 2.2. And I'm going to get a nice even 75. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 75 kilograms. And my assumption is if you do this on the test and they tell you not to put the numerical answer, they'll go back, they'll check it, they'll see that you got the right answer. And then they will, they'll give you points for it. Okay, but try your best to follow directions, because then that makes your instructor have to do a lot more work. Unless you have a particular reason you want your instructor to do a lot more work. All right, for this one, I'm going to take 117 divided by 2.2. Now this is one where we're going to get a number that is 53.181818. A lot of repeating ones and eights there. This is where you want to apply your rounding rules. The rules for rounding are, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. The number is greater than 1, and we're not doing metric to metric conversion like we did here. The reason we don't make this 0.3 is on question 2 is because we don't round basic conversions. We just leave them as they are. This, we're actually going from the American standard pounds to the metric system kilograms, so it is applicable to round. So you would round this to 53.2. Excuse me. All right, going down to the 182 pounds divided by 2.2. And then this time we're going to get 82.727272. I'm going to look at the hundredths place. It's a 2. I don't need to round the 7, so I'll leave it alone. What I'm looking for is if the number is 4 or fewer, so 43210, I do not round. If it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then we do round up. So this would be 82.7. If you type in 83, it will be wrong because they want you to round it to the nearest tenth. When you get into the true clinical aspect of things and you're working in a hospital or other healthcare setting, you might round to the nearest whole pound or whole kilogram. But at CCAC, we round to the nearest tenth until you're otherwise told not to. All right, here's another one going from 200 milliliters to ounces. The trick here is, hopefully you know already now, that 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. So I'm just going to take 200 and then I'm going to divide by 30. And I'm going to get 6.6 repeating. So my answer is going to be 6.7 ounces. And again, the reason we round there is because we're going from the metric system now to the American standard system, or US standard, or whatever that system's called. And also, you don't want to see 6 point and a whole bunch of 6s repeating in your final answer. You want it to look nice and clean, rounded to the nearest tenth. And most of the time, it'll be obvious that you should be rounding with some of these numbers. So 350 mLs to liters is just another conversion. We're going to move our decimal 1, 2, 3 to the left. So we're just going to get 0.35, but I'm going to write 0.35 because I want to show you how that gets marked wrong. Now you will notice that these will auto save Just make sure all your answers are saved before you proceed, before you hit submit. Make sure you double check your answers. So if I'm going through and I realize, oh, I should have a 0 here, I want to make sure I put that in. Sorry, guys, a little bit of a head cold. All right, going from milliliters to teaspoons. Again, you need to know that 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. So I'm going to take 30 divided by 5, and I'm going to get a nice even 6 teaspoons. Right? And then you can even reverse that. You could say 6 teaspoons times 5 ml should give me, it does give me 30 ml. Tablespoons, 1 tablespoon is 15 ml. So all I'm going to do is take my 2.5 times 15. And I'm going to get 37.5 ml. Now, even though on this practice test, they tell you not to use the units, you will have to use units and indicate your units when you take the paper test starting next semester. So second, third, fourth semester, you will need to do that. I do think that the main reason why on Blackboard they tell you not to worry about the units is because some students write units like that, where the ML is right up against the number. There's no space, or there's a space, or they actually write out milliliters. So they just say, just give us the numerical order, the numerical number. All right. Ounces to milliliter, already mentioned that 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. So I'm just going to take 1.5 times 30. And I'm going to get 45. Now, as I mentioned before, anyone that came in after I started, I'm not writing any of these out. So if you do have a question on how something is set up, let me know and I will write these out. I did write some of these out in the review that I did yesterday on Wednesday. It's recorded. I just haven't uploaded it to YouTube yet, but you could see that I worked through some of these, especially when we get down to like the fluid replacement questions. But just let me know, stop me, typing in the chat, or ask me while you're sitting here, and I'll make sure I answer that for you. All right. So this one I went over last week or maybe a week and a half ago. And this is the one where I told you like the helpful formulation for these fluid replacement questions is just taking the actual output. So in this instance, it's 500 milliliters. And then putting that over top of the expected output. So the expected output is kind of like your available, where 500 is like your order, for lack of a better term. So my order over my available, and then times my replacement, which is my quantity, which is 40. So every time I do these, I'm always going to do it in the same order. I'm going to say, what did the patient actually void out? 500. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to say 500. In my calculator, 500 over 125. So I'm going to divide by 125, which gives me 4. And then I'm just going to multiply by the replacement volume of 40. And then I get an answer of 160 milliliters. Now, I had a student ask me yesterday, do you need to include milliliters because it's not clear or doesn't have like the space milliliters? It's indicated here in the question. So for all of them, numerical answer only. So I'm going to apply the same setup procedure here. What is my actual output? 400. What is my expected output or my available? 100. And then what is my replacement volume? 30. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, when they mention how many milliliter, you just have to write the numbers. You don't have to mention any milliliter or nothing, right?
Right, so per the directions for this test, and you always want to make sure you read the directions, they're telling you only put the numerical answer in.
Got it.
Cool. So 400 over 100 is 4 again, times 30. So this time the replacement volume would be 120. The other reason I'm telling you about if you do happen to put your units in here, what you're going to get is it'll get marked wrong. Like I did on a couple of these questions, like where I put the kilogram here, you'll see how it gets marked wrong. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's wrong. And then that's the first thing to kind of troubleshoot when you're wondering what you missed. All right. These, I think, are a little bit more straightforward questions. I think most nursing students, even if they're not feeling the most confident when it comes to math, usually have a pretty good understanding of the medication delivery, especially when it comes to the capsules and the tablets and things like that. So it says your patient receives 500 milligrams by mouth twice a day, and it wants to know how many capsules per dose. So make sure you read each question carefully because they could easily change this, how many capsules per day, and then you'd want to make sure you encompass or account for that BID that's there, okay? So 500 milligrams, each capsule is 250 milligrams, so you're just going to give them 2 capsules. 2 at 8 a.m., 2 at 8 p.m., or whatever the breakdown is.
So if they say the per day, how much is going to be?
Oh, you asked me how many units?
No, like you get the answers like 2 capsule per dose. Instead of per dose, if it writes per day, so how are we going to calculate?
You tell me. What do you think it would be per day?
It might be times 2.
Mm-hmm. So what would that be?
4.
Yep. So if I give 2 capsules twice a day, then total for the day, 4. The
Okay.
tricky, yeah.
Okay, so anything like per day, we're gonna times 2.
No, you have to pay attention to what it says here. So if it said
Oh, okay.
TID, you times 3. If it said QID, you times by 4.
Got it.
Okay, good. So it is important. I would say, I don't know that they were going to ask you per day, but if they do, just pay attention to it. And that's how you know how many doses to multiply by. It's what it tells you here. So if you didn't already, make sure you review those shorthands like the TID, QID, BID, and then Q12H, Q8H, Q6H, Q4H, any of those things, Q2H. All right, so this is a mark the cup question. The good thing is when it's a mark the cup question, your answer is always going to be on the cup. Okay, so it's one of these numbers. Okay, so when we're doing this, we look at the question, tells us potassium chloride elixir, and it says 40 milliequivalents by mouth, and then it says QID. So they're going to get this 4 times a day with juice. Then it says you have available 20 milliequivalents per 15 ml. And then how many milliliters will you administer per 1 dose, and then mark the cup. So I find that just doing ordered over available is really easy to do, or desired over have. 40 over 20 is 2 times your quantity, which is 15. So your answer is 30. Now, yesterday I put a tag right at the middle line. I don't know exactly where the box is in the key, but you should be able to put it within a decent range in this area. But I'm just going to keep it right here, right on that middle line of the cup. Okay. The only other reason this would be wrong is if you happen to mark it in the wrong location. If, let's say, you do mark it, let's say I accidentally mark it at 15, you could clear it, and then you can put the mark where you want it to be. All right. This question is commonly missed, and the reason it's commonly missed is because it asks you how many teaspoons would you give. It doesn't ask you how many milliliters, which is your default and what you get conditioned to doing. So again, that's why I always remind you, read the questions. Because just because you see dilantin doesn't mean it's a teaspoon question. It doesn't mean it's not a teaspoon question, just make sure you're reading it, okay? So it tells you 250 milligrams or 125 milligrams per 5 ml. So if I'm plugging that into my calculator, I'm going to take 250 over 125, which is 2, then multiply by my quantity, which is 5. So I'm going to get 10 ml, but then I need to convert that to teaspoons. Remember, each teaspoon is 5 ml. So my answer then would be 2 teaspoons. Now, alternatively, and I did write this out on the review of this that I did yesterday, I can also say that 125 milligram is also per 1 teaspoon. So I can just do the 250 over 125 times 1, and it's going to get me to that same answer point, which is 2. Now, you can do this as long as it is an equivalent. So if it's 5 milliliters, then that's a teaspoon. If it's 15 milliliters, that's a tablespoon. So you can do that as long as it's an equivalent. You don't have to do that, but if you find that that's easier for you to remember, then that's okay to do. All right, number 16. The order is 150 milligrams. It says orally, then it says GID. And if you're sitting there going like, what the crap is that? I'm with you. It's a typo. It's supposed to be QID. Okay. There is no GID. All right. So the label here can be a little bit confusing because it says 125 milligrams and then 200,000 units. Just ignore the 200,000 units. The only reason you would need to know the units is if that order was in units, okay? Your order's in milligrams, your availables in milligrams per 5 ml. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 150, divide it by 125. I'm going to get 1.2, and I'm going to multiply that number by 5. I get an answer again of 6 milliliters. We just had that answer a couple times. All right, number 17 sometimes seems tricky because they use units instead of milligrams or other things, but this is just another example or another unit of measure for medications. As long as the medication itself is measured in units, it shouldn't be an issue. Tells you to swish and swallow, and then QID is 4 times a day. But this just says how many milliliters would you administer for 1 dose. So all you're going to do is take your 150,000 and then divide it by the available 100,000. And you're getting an answer of 1.5. Notice here that it's just per milliliter versus here it was per 5 milliliters. So just pay attention to what the actual milliliters is on the label, because that's another area where students tend to get tripped up is they'll put it as 1 milliliter instead of actually putting it as 2. or I mean, it's 5.
So
Sometimes
if you divide the uh like 150,000 and then 100,000 and then you get milliliters, not units.
correct, because you canceled out the units.
Oh, okay.
So let me write that. So you can see. So if I'm doing like dimensional or ordered over available, I have 150,000 units. You see why I don't like using the mouse. I'm just going to abbreviate units. 150,000 units over 100,000 units. Again, if you prefer to do this using dimensional analysis, it works out the same. Sorry, told you it looks like a baby writing. Those cancel out. And then we're times 1 milliliter. So the only unit I have remaining is milliliters. So this is where it's beneficial to write these things out so you can kind of see how these things, especially as they're less challenging and as they get more difficult, especially in later semesters, it's helpful to kind of be in the habit of, okay, these are canceling out. The only one that gets weird is the fluid replacement question because everything's in milliliters. It's milliliters over milliliters times milliliters. And so still works out, but all right, for this one, it says Valium 2.5 milligrams, and then we have 5 milligram tablets available. So I'm just going to take 5 divided by 2.5. Typically on the paper test, you would write 1/2 or 1/2, but the directions explicitly said if you have an answer of 1/2, write it as the decimal form. Okay. I personally don't see the difference between those answers. And it would make sense to me that either answer would be acceptable, but that's not up to me. I'm not the one grading your test. So you always want to make sure and confirm with your instructor what they want. All right. Here's another cup question. They tell us our order is 0.375 grams. So that's important. And then it says every 6 hours. And then it says we have available 125 milligrams in 5 ml. So before you do anything, you have to convert grams to milligrams. So all I'm going to do is just move my decimal 1, 2, 3 to the right. And then, so instead of 0.375 grams, the number I'm going to use is 375 milligrams. Then I'm going to either plug that into my calculator or 375 over 125 is 3. And then multiply that by the quantity, which is 5 ml. The milligrams cancel out. So 5 times 3 is 15. Now I did this last time. I'm going to put my mark now on the 15 instead of on the line. And we're just going to see if it gives me the point for it or not. If it's me, I'm going to highly recommend that you mark the line. All right, 8 more questions. Digoxin, the order is 0.75 milligrams. And it wants to know how many tablets we administer per opinion dose. That's supposed to be 1. Okay, it's typo. Now they give you 2 numbers here. They give you the microgram dosage and the milligram dosage. They're the same dosage. It's just that if the order is in milligrams, use the milligram number. If the order is in micrograms, use the microgram number. You don't need to do any converting with this. You just take 0.75 divided by 0.125, and you're going to get 6 tablets. Now, I don't know if that's too much or a lot, or if that's a good range. It seems like a lot, but all right. For cimetidine, it says the order is 0.8 grams, but we want to know how much to administer in 1 dose. You can see that it's Tagamet, 400 milligrams, and they're tablets. Okay, and it even says how many tablets will be administered in one dose. So again, we're going to convert that 0.8 grams to milligrams. So 0.8 grams is 800 milligrams. 800 over 400 would be 2. All right, Aldamet. Aldamet is 400 milligrams by mouth, TID, which means 3 times a day. And it just wants to know how much would you give in one dose. So for this one, I'm going to take my 400, my order. I'm going to divide by the 250, which is going to give me 1.6. And then I'm going to multiply by the per 5 ml. So times 5 milliliters. So I get 8 milliliters is the answer. Now, is that too much, too little? I don't know. Seems minuscule. Here's another marking. This time they're going to have you mark. This thing is actually called a Tubex, but they're saying mark the syringe. It's a pre-filled syringe. So all you have to do is take the order, 75 milligrams, and then compare it to the available, which is 50. So 75 divided by 50, and you're going to get 1.5. So you're going to look for 1.5 on here. You can see it's easily right here. So you can mark it right at 1.5 or on the line. I'm just going to put it right on the line. I think if you mark the number, you'll be fine. Again, if you make a mistake, just hit clear. And then you can put it where you want it to be. For this one, this is another mark the syringe. So it tells you 2,500 units for heparin. Heparin's available in 5,000 units per milliliter. So you're just going to take the 2,500 divided by 5,000 times your 1 milliliter will be 0.5. Now this looks a little tricky, right? Because you see 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. Where's 0.5? Well, if it's done right, then 0.5 should be here. So we might have to say 0.4, 0.45, 0.5, 0.55, 0.6. And that's how this syringe is broken down. So my 0.5 is actually going to be right there. So there'll always be a line for you to indicate. And sometimes you do get this minutia or these smaller points, these smaller data points on the syringe, and they want you to make sure you're able to choose the right one and not just guess at it.
We can mark on the line or on the clear space.
I would not mark the clear space. I would mark the line. I don't know if they would. I don't know what the answer box is. So let's see. So if I estimate, let's say I do it here. Let's see if we get the right answer. So if it gets marked wrong, then we'll know. But we can't do that. All right, for this question, we have morphine ordered at 45 milligrams. And then we want to know how many mLs to administer. And we see our available is 25 milligrams. You'll see that 250 milligrams, that's the entire 10 ml filled morphine, but you're not giving them the entire 10 milliliters. They just want 45 milligrams out of the 250 milligrams. And so you have to use this ratio here of the 25 milligrams per milliliter. So 45 divided by 25, and I'm going to get 1.8. Here's another morphine question, but it's a different morphine label. This time the order is for 5 milligrams. And then you can see that you have 10 milligrams per 10 milliliters. And then in parentheses, it tells you 1 milligram per milliliter. So it reduces it down because it's a 1-to-1 relationship. So each milligram is equal to the equivalent milliliter. So 1 milligram is 1 milliliter. So that means 5 milligrams is 5 milliliters. All right, these next two questions are pretty straightforward. The sliding scale question is just going to ask you to, you're going to give you a number. So in this instance, they gave you 200. They're going to say, look at the sliding scale. And then wherever that 200 falls, you see it falls right here, 160, 220, which is in the, in the 2-unit range. So we're just going to give them 2 units. And then finally, this question is more about just picking the correct syringe. So anytime you're administering insulin with, for a diabetic, you always use a syringe that's going to be measured in units. This is where things get a little bit different because you're used to giving everyone an ml syringe. But what they're asking you to do is to choose the syringe that you would utilize, and you would utilize the unit syringe. Now, I don't think it matters where you mark it as long as you mark it. I think I marked the letter B. I think I marked it on the syringe itself. I'm going to mark it at the 10 plus 20, the 30 unit total, just to see if it still counts it as being correct. All right, so I have all my answers. They're all saved. So let's see what I get as a response. And then this is, so it tells me that I got, okay, so I can look at my results. So it says I got 25 out of 28, okay? So some of them I already know the ones that I missed. So remember this one, question 1, I said 1.500. So if you leave those lagging zeros or those trailing zeros in there, it will get marked wrong. Question 3, I put the kilogram unit in. So if I was going back and answering or as the instructor checking the answers on that, they'd probably give you that answer because your math was correct. You just happen to add extra information. This would be wrong because you had the trailing zeros. So that is incorrect. That would still be marked wrong. This would get corrected because kilograms is, you're not wrong. You just included information that you need to include. Also, don't include text or dialogue. Like, I think it's, just put your numerical answer. This one, remember, I forgot, or I didn't put 0 in front of the 0.35. So that is why that was marked wrong. So if I leave it at 0.35 and I don't have my leading 0, it will be marked wrong and it is an incorrect answer. So make sure you have your leading 0.35. And then what was the other one that we tried to miss? So I put a mark in the middle here. I put a mark over here, so that was marked correct. On my Tubex, I put a mark right at the 1.5, so that was marked correct. I put it in the space, so clearly that was okay. So the box must be like right in this area here. And then I marked this syringe at the 30, and so that was okay too. So it looks like as long as you mark it on the syringe somewhere, there's probably a wide space for it. So if you go through this practice set and you find that you've missed a couple, just double check. It might just be that the way you tag something or if you put in or forgot like a 0 or something, those things can catch you and be the reason why you missed something. But I think you'll be able to make those corrections just fine. So All right, so that's all I have time for today. I actually went a little bit over, so thanks for sticking around and bearing with me for an extra 15 minutes. But I will be here on Tuesday and then again on Thursday next week to kind of rehash some of these other things. So, what do you mean?
These practice questions.
Hold on one second. Go ahead. Like if it's 57.18, so you round the tenths place. So 57.18 would get rounded to 57.2. So you don't, the only time you round to the hundredths place, if you have a number less than 1, and it's like let's say I get 0.375 milliliters as an answer, then you would round that to 0.38. The exception to that would be if you're just doing just a standard unit to unit conversion, going from liters to milliliters, you do not round. But if your answer is how much would you administer given a certain medication and you get 0.375 milliliters, then you would give them 0.38. That's the only time you would round to that second decimal. Okay. And then as far as practice, everything's located here on the Blackboard site. So these are the hard copy practice sets that we've gone over. This is the online version that I just went over. There's some additional practice. So if you click here, it'll open up my OneDrive folder. And then these might actually be repeats. Oh, you can't see these. These are actually, this is an outdated review, which is why it's not, it's hidden from you. But if you click here, that'll open up the OneDrive folder. And then there are some outdated practice questions on there if you want to look at some of the old stuff. But this is the most up-to-date and the most, like, the things you should be focusing on will be those two. So, all right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off because I got another class to prepare for, and I'll be back with some of you on Tuesday.